Hey everybody, welcome to the chess review. I just got done playing this really cool game against a Scandinavian. I used to play the Scandinavian myself a lot as the black pieces, and recently started getting into some Alekhine, and eventually might just have to learn E4, E5 systems. Boo. But this was an interesting attempt by my opponent early on to try to shake things up. And he plays kind of an off-the-wall Scandinavian here. So let's go ahead and jump in. So Scandinavian ensues after the initial take there, where black is going to play with the queen. And d4 is a very, I think, underrated way to approach this. A lot of people are going to play knight c3 instead and bring the knight out to attack the queen immediately. I like this move. White has to play d4 in the Scandinavian. There's very few setups where white's going to play d3 at some point. So I love d4, it's super solid. And already on the third move, my opponent deviates with queen e4 check. In the master database on chess.com, there are no games with this move. So I responded with probably a lot of people would think the worst move. I move the bishop out, and the queen takes here. So if you're new to chess, go ahead and pause the video for a second, figure out how white is supposed to respond to this. And the way that white is supposed to respond to this is with bishop f3. Now the queen cannot take the rook, and she has to retreat. And there is only one square that the queen can go to. So it's not a bad idea in openings to put moves out there that force your opponents into certain lines of action. Now, take stock of the situation. I'm down a pawn. My king side is ripped open, and I'm not going to be able to castle over there anytime soon. On the bright side, I'm going to get quick development with my pieces, and black only has a queen developed so far. So how should white proceed? Well, the plan is not to leave my king in the middle. The plan is to get him castled over to the queen side. So I do want to start evacuating my queen side pieces and getting them out of the way. Knight c3 accomplishes that. And typical move in the Scandinavian, I don't think it was necessary, but a lot of times when the queen is over here on a5, black will play c6 so that when white attacks the queen, she's got a safe square to get to. So my opponent just sort of sticking to traditional Scandinavian ideas, and it's probably not the best approach, but he's up a pawn, so he's not in that much trouble. Now, I decided to make a play at the queen here to expand on the king side by moving a pawn, by playing h4, but the computer gives d5, the immediate d5 right here, as the best move for white to take control of the position. Reason being, after black takes, if black takes, after black takes, white can take with the knight, putting pressure on the c7 square, which would be forking the king and the rook. So the computer says that playing d5 here is the best move. I decided to start throwing some pawns at the queen to see what happens. He's already moved the queen so many times in this game. If he decides to move her again, either now or after I move the pawn up to h5, then the queen is running all over the place. So he doesn't have to move the queen yet, but he does. He pulls her back to d6. Now I've got 4 pieces developed, and they're not the most coherent with each other, but black only has 2, and I'm down a pawn. So this is roughly an equal game right now. But you can definitely believe that both of us are sort of out of our preparation with black's initial plan of playing queen e4 with the check, just taking us right out of the book, which is fun. So I decided to play knight to e4 here. Engine said it was a good move. Again, developing another piece, putting pressure on the queen. I'm allowed to develop my knight or move my knight twice if it makes him move a piece he's already moved again. So I'm not gaining anything in terms of tempo, but the more I force that queen to move, the greater chances he's going to put the queen on a not great square. It happens on this move. He chooses the third best place to put the queen. And my move here took me 1.1 seconds to play, the immediate c3. And now he is over here in b6. So my knight move I moved the knight. It was the second time I moved the knight. It attacked the queen. It made the queen move. So we were sort of even there. But then after I play c3, developing another piece, he has to move the queen again. And now all of a sudden it's not an exactly even game anymore. Now all of a sudden white has a very slight advantage, but white with an advantage while also being down a pawn says a lot. Because usually pawns are worth half a point to a point. So I decide to start getting the knights coordinated. He finally develops a piece, but guys, if he wants to castle queenside, then he should start evacuating his queenside pieces. He should get the knight out, he should get the bishop out, right? But he shouldn't put the knight in front of the bishop. If he's going to do that, he decides to do it. Surprise, surprise, it's not a great move. The reason I'm pulling the queen over here is because I want to develop my bishop and I want to get my king castled, right? We talked about this earlier in the game that I'm going to castle kingside. Before I can evacuate the bishop, I have to protect this pawn with my queen, because as soon as I move the bishop, his queen can feast. I want a castle to that side. I don't want my castle destroyed. So he pulls the knight in, and I have two pieces defending the knight already, but I like those pieces where they are, so I go ahead, and since he moved a knight 2 times, I can move a knight 2 times. I'm getting developed here. Now, he should take the knight on e4 here. And he decides to move the knight again. He does not have time for this now because I'm in a position where I can, it does nothing to stop me from the move that I was going to play. My bishop goes to d2. He knows I'm going to castle here, so he starts throwing the pawn. I castle anyways. Now white is ahead. Black still has to get this bishop out somewhere, you know, try to get pressure on the queen, maybe set that up with a fianchetto over here and gain some sort of power here. This is what black needs to do. And so he decides to bring the knight out. Instead, I think moving the bishop out or starting the fianchetto process here to get things happening is the way to go. He falls further behind here. I can take, and unless he wants to stack a pawn, he's got to take with the knight. He's moving the knight again. He still has 1, 2, 3 moves before he can castle on his king side. Or maybe 2 moves before he castles on the queen side. So sliding the rook over to gain some pressure here. And he ignores castling again. He ignores king safety again. And lashes out over here. I don't know what the problem was over there. So now he's still behind. Rook to e2. The computer absolutely hates this move. But I was prepared for bishop g4, and then after I take, and he takes with his knight, potentially, and his knight's putting pressure on this pawn, I'm already guarding it with my rook, and then I can stack here, and then we're barreling down. So that's what I'm looking for. Now, important note here, if you're black, which piece do you take with? You can pause the video and think for a second. There's a significant difference in the engine evaluation between taking with the pawn and taking with the knight. Which one would you take with? The engine says the best is what my opponent played, which is to take with the h-pawn. If the knight takes, then we get bishop g5, and we just get all of this pressure here. Then the knight's not in the way for the bishop to hit that pawn anymore, and things are getting very ugly. Although I still think he has e6 in such a situation, and he'll be fine. So he takes with the pawn, which was the best move, and I go ahead now defending the unguarded pawn over here. Engine doesn't like this move. It's a little bit slow, but now he continues the kingside assault, or the queenside assault. I did not have to play this move, but I did. He brings the rook in. I don't like this. I'm going to go ahead and stack rooks and keep to the original plan. He does something so inconceivable to me here that he puts his queen here. I don't know why. It's like he didn't see that I was going to cut that off. Now he's got to move the queen. I take the rook. He takes the rook. I'm up again, and he has to move the queen again. He doesn't move the queen again. He decides to throw a pawn forward. So now we have to start evaluating. His queen is kind of cut off from the king side. She can come back to here and lend some protection. Also get, you know, maybe some X-ray stuff going on, but she can still participate. But if black can just get his king castle here, he's gonna be okay. You gotta think. So go ahead and play knight f5 here, just trying to put pressure on both of these pawns. And I'm just trying to create a bishop overload situation, essentially. Just start piling on pressure onto one of the pawns that he has to defend and just overload him. And he plays e6. So e6 is a move that I've been expecting for a while. It's one of the ways to vent the bishop and get him out of there and get castled and everything. Again, this pawn though is stuck. It can't take because of the X-ray there. So once he gets the bishop in the way, it'll cut that off. So just queen to e2 here, no big deal. And he really needs to, at this point, I think, abandon castling as an idea and just run the king over to d7. The engine agrees with me that that's the best move. During the game, I really thought that that's what he should do. He decides to play here. And this position now, all of a sudden, is so astronomically bad for black that almost any move that I play here is going to be winning. So you can pause your video if you want. I found the third best move, and it's still absolutely crushing. This is still crushing. He needs to still, according to the engine, still just run the king over to d7, but who's got time for that? Why would you do that when you can go chase the knight? This is why you don't do that. And if his bishop takes my rook and I get my queen in there and all this pressure coming down here, the knight can come back, remove the pawn, the king is utterly exposed. It's just nasty. And then he pulls the queen back. From here, it's pretty simple because just about everything wins. But I decide I want to wipe out all the pawns. And now you can kind of finish this from this. The game ends pretty quickly after this. He brings a rook up. I take care of the queen. He steps up with the king. I'm over here. I didn't have to play that move either, but I want the X-ray on the king. And then this just becomes mate in 4. Bishop e5 check, and my opponent resigns with 19 seconds left on his clock. This is a 3-2 game, and I had 9.2 seconds left on my clock when this one ended. So hope you guys enjoyed that little offbeat, off the beaten path, queen e4 check, luring him in, hitting him with the bishop, giving him only one move, and then playing some typical Scandinavian stuff where we just keep the queen moving all around the board, guarding, setting, guarding, with a nice queenside castle, and then black is just completely undeveloped. If you're a Scandinavian player, get castled at some point. If you found this video useful and all that kind of stuff, you want to see what else I'm up to, like and subscribe. It's the best move, and I'll see you guys soon.